People always think the scariest nights are the ones filled with flames. They picture high winds driving a wall of fire across a hillside, or an old downtown building with smoke boiling out of the windows, while sirens scream from every direction. Those nights will take something out of you, no shoop. But some of the nights that sit the heaviest on my chest didn't have much fire at all. One of them started with nothing more dramatic than a snowstorm, a flickering exit sign, and a nursing home that went dark. My name's Cap Sam. I spent most of my life at Station 47, in a little Midwestern town that hardly makes the map. Long enough to watch my rookies go gray at the temples. Long enough to see more than one state-of-the-art building turn into yesterday's news. We didn't have skyscrapers. We didn't have big factories. We had houses. We had old brick storefronts. We had senior centers and churches, and one small nursing home sitting on a hill just outside of town. And one winter night, every light in that nursing home went out. That's the story I want to tell you. Not because of how many inches of snow we drove through, or how much smoke we saw, but because of what happens when the lights go off in a building full of people who already feel like the world is forgetting them. Because that night, the fire we were really fighting wasn't on the walls. It was in the dark corners of people's minds, including mine. The storm started slow. It was late January, the kind of stretch when even the calendar looks tired of winter. All the pretty holiday snow was long gone. What you had left was gray slush, salt-stained boots, and short tempers. That afternoon, the sky went from cloudy to that special kind of flat, heavy white that means the clouds are serious this time. By the time the sun should have gone down, not that we'd seen it, the flakes were coming sideways on a stiff north wind. I remember standing at the bay door of Station 47 after supper, coffee in hand, watching the streetlights turn into hazy yellow circles. Snow swirled through the beams like someone had shaken up a snow globe and walked away. Inside, the station sounded the way it always did on storm nights. Parker was at the table, spreading sand out on the floor map, running through which hills and intersections would give us trouble first. Jones had the scanner turned a little too loud, listening to the county trucks talk about drifting snow and plow routes. The old forced air heater in the ceiling clanked and rattled as it tried to keep up with the cold sneaking through every gap in the doors. Storm nights are tricky for us. On the one hand, everybody knows to take it slow. Schools close. People stay home. Fewer cars, fewer fires started by people grilling on wooden decks. On the other hand, if something does go wrong, the conditions make everything harder. Ladders slide on ice. Hoses freeze. Ambulances get stuck 3 blocks away from where they need to be. Most of the time, you just wait and listen. I took a sip of the station coffee, burnt as usual, and winced anyway, more out of habit than surprise. I swear this stuff could strip paint, I said. Parker glanced up from his sand map. You say that like it's a bad thing, he answered. Think of it as internal de-icer. Jones snorted from the couch. I'm saving my caffeine for the calls. No sense burning through my good nerves early. We might get lucky, Parker said. Storm might scare everybody into behaving. I didn't say anything. In this line of work, lucky is a strange word to throw around. For us to have a quiet night, it usually means somebody else had a good one. But it can also feel like you're just daring fate to take a swing. I wandered back to the watch desk and sat down. The radio sat quiet on its shelf, green screen glowing faintly. The top line scrolled the usual boilerplate. Date, time, weather alert. A crawl at the bottom flashed winter storm warning until 4 a.m. I rubbed the heel of my hand over my knee. It was aching more than usual in the cold. That joint had taken one too many hits jumping off trucks and crouching on frozen pavement. I don't know if you've noticed, but the older you get, the more thoughts wander in places you didn't invite them. Storm nights at the station used to feel like adventure when I was a kid on the job. Now they made me think about roofs sagging under heavy snow, and all the grandmas and grandpas sitting under those roofs. They made me think about all the folks in town who couldn't get around like they used to. People whose legs or lungs or minds didn't move as fast anymore. People living in rooms with adjustable beds and call buttons on the rail. People in places like Maple Creek Care Center. Maple Creek sat on a low hill a couple miles out of town, where the road curved past a line of bare trees. It was one of those buildings that looked friendlier in the sunshine. On a June afternoon, with birds in the grass and families stopping by, you could almost forget it was a nursing home. But at night, in winter, it looked like a ship. All those windows glowing in the dark, long halls, one nurse's station trying to watch too many doors. I'd been there more times than I can count. Sometimes on calls, a fall, a heart rhythm gone sideways, a confused resident who'd pulled their oxygen line out at 3 in the morning. Sometimes off duty, on my own, to visit old friends who'd traded their houses for hospital beds and bingo nights. When you've been in this business long enough, you start recognizing not just addresses, but faces. You see the same people move from their home to the ER, to rehab, and sometimes to Maple Creek. And you start to understand something most younger folks don't like to think about. If we're lucky, really lucky, some version of that will be us one day. So while Jones and Parker argued soft-heartedly over whose turn it was to make another pot of coffee, I sat there at the desk, listening to the heater rattle and watching the snow build, thinking about Maple Creek. About the people inside, listening to the same wind and wondering if the power would hold. And then the radio crackled. Just a small burst at first, enough to make us all look up. "Here we go," Parker murmured, pushing back from the table. The tone sounded, one sharp, one long. Medical channel. "Station 47, respond for fire alarm activation and power outage. Maple Creek Care Center, 200 Maple Hill Road. Report of full building without power. Alarms sounding. Residents on oxygen. Timeout 21:38. My stomach dropped a half-inch in my body. Fire alarms at a nursing home are never good news. Fire alarm plus power outage in the middle of a snowstorm, that gets your attention. I grabbed the radio mic. "Station 47 copies," I said. "Maple Creek Care Center, fire alarm and power loss. Do we have any reports of smoke or fire on site?" There was a breath's pause as dispatch checked. "Negative on visible fire at this time," the operator answered. "Staff reports alarms sounding throughout building, emergency lights only, generator not engaging. Several residents on oxygen concentrators. EMS and law enforcement are en route. Advise when responding." Parker was already moving toward the gear racks. Jones turned the TV off with a snap. 47 responding," I said. "2 engines and the squad. Will advise on scene." I hung the mic back in its cradle and stood. "All right, boys," I said. "Bundle up. It's going to be a long one." Getting dressed for a winter call is part science, part superstition. You want enough layers to survive standing outside for an hour in the wind, but not so many that you're sweating through your shirt in 5 minutes once you start working. I pulled on my turnout pants over my station uniform, tugged the suspenders over my shoulders. The bunker coat went on next, then my helmet, gloves hooked to the D-ring on my belt. Parker swung into his gear beside me, tightening straps with quick, practiced movements. "Generator not engaging," he said. "Think it froze solid? Or they've just been ignoring the maintenance logs again? I'm not in the mood to place bets, I answered. Let's just assume nothing works until we prove it otherwise. Jones grabbed the radio board and clipped it to his coat. EMS is sending 2 rigs to stage in the lower lot, he called out. County says their plows will hit Maple Hill Road next, but for now, it's a mess. Of course it is, I muttered. We climbed into Engine 1, our first out engine, and the big diesel rumbled to life. Behind us, Squad 47, our smaller rescue unit, fired up too. I slid into the officer's seat, helmet on my lap, radio clipped to my collar. Parker took the driver's seat, hands steady on the wheel. Take it slow, I reminded him. No heroics getting there. I'd like to arrive in one piece. He gave a short nod. The bay doors rolled up. Cold air knifed into the warm station, smelling of exhaust and snow and the faint metal tang of the winter night. Parker eased the engine out. The siren wound up with a low, rising wail. We turned onto the main road, tires crunching through slush. The wind pushed the snow sideways across the beams of our headlights, making the world ahead look like a tunnel closing in. For a minute, nobody talked. I listened to the chains clanking on the rear tires and the rumble of the engine, and tried not to picture dark hallways and frail hands reaching for call buttons that didn't light up. I'd been in Maple Creek enough to know the layout. 2 long wings of resident rooms, one on each side of a central nurses' station. A dining room at the front, a small activities room at the back. A tiny beauty salon where the ladies got their hair set every Thursday. Dozens of people inside, most of them unable to leave their own beds without help. We were about to pay all of them a visit. Dispatch from Engine 1, I said into my lapel mic. Be advised, roads are snow-covered and slick. Progress will be slower than normal. Copy, Engine 1, came the reply. Law enforcement reports staff attempting to evacuate some residents into central hallways. That image didn't sit right with me. You move residents into the hall during a tornado warning. You don't do it during a fire alarm, unless somebody sees actual flames and they're running out of options. Hallways can become chimneys. I pressed my thumb against the radio button again. Dispatch, can you confirm any report of smoke or visible fire at Maple Creek? I asked. A few seconds ticked by. I could imagine the dispatcher on the other end, juggling multiple lines. Engine 1, negative on confirmed fire, she answered. Staff reports smoke smell near East Wing, possible from mechanical room. No flames seen at this time. Mechanical room, where the generator lived. I didn't like that much either. Copy, I said. Advise staff to keep doors to resident rooms closed, unless actively evacuating. We'll assess on arrival. I let go of the mic, flexed my fingers in my gloves, then unbuckled the chin strap on my helmet and set it square on my head. It wasn't time yet, but I liked to be ready. Beside me, Parker squinted through the swirling snow. You ever notice, he said, how every time we think about retirement, the job reminds us why it doesn't want to let us go? Speak for yourself, I told him. I was thinking about my knees, not retirement. The job can keep its drama. My joints, on the other hand, would like a word. He gave a tight grin. Outside, the flashing red and white of our lights reflected off the snowbanks and the windows of parked cars. Somewhere in the storm, a plow truck growled past, showering sparks as its blades scraped bare pavement. We turned onto Maple Hill Road. The snow was deeper here, drifts piled up along the ditch. The engine's chains bit in, but the back end twitched as we climbed the hill. Then, through the veil of falling snow, the silhouette of Maple Creek appeared. From the outside, It looked almost peaceful. A low L-shaped building, roofline soft under a fresh blanket of snow. A few emergency lights glowed dim red near the entrances. The rest of the windows were dark. But as we got closer, I could see shadows moving behind the glass. People at the doors, flashlights bobbing in the halls, and above it all, a pulsing red light on the roof, turning slowly. The fire alarm beacon. The only other lights were from a couple of squad cars in the front lot, and the steady sweep of our own. "Engine 1 to all units," I said. "We're on scene Maple Creek. Full facility appears without normal power. Alarm beacon active. We'll be establishing command at the main entrance." Parker brought the engine to a stop near the front door, careful not to block where the ambulances would need to stage. Squad 47 pulled in behind us. For a moment, I just looked at the building. Through the front windows, I could see residents sitting in the lobby, bundled in blankets, their faces pale ovals in the dim red glow. The storm wind howled against the siding, pushing eddies of snow across the parking lot. Inside, those people weren't just sitting in the dark. They were sitting in the dark with machines that were running out of battery. "Let's go," I said, as soon as we opened the engine doors. The cold grabbed at my throat. Snow stung exposed skin like thrown sand. I hunched my shoulders against it and pulled my collar up higher. The front doors of Maple Creek hissed open on their hydraulic arms as we approached. Inside, the lobby was lit only by a couple of battery-powered emergency lights and the glow of flashlights. The air smelled like too many things at once. Disinfectant, old coffee, fear, and just the barest hint of something else. Hot plastic. A nurse in blue scrubs met us just inside the door, cheeks flushed, hair frizzing out of her ponytail. "Thank God you're here," she said. Her name tag read Lori. I'd seen her before, in calmer moments. "What's going on, Lori?" I asked. "Give it to me, quick." "Power went out about 20 minutes ago," she said, breathing fast. "The generator kicked on for maybe 30 seconds, then there was a loud pop, and a smell like burning rubber. Then everything died. We're on emergency lights only now." The alarm panel said trouble, and then started screaming, and we can't get it to silence. We've got residents on oxygen concentrators in both wings, and the backup batteries are almost dead on some of them. We've called the families, but the roads are awful, and— She stopped, catching sight of the expression I must have had. "You did good calling us early," I said. "Are you seeing smoke anywhere? Flames?" "There's a haze near the East Wing mechanical closet," she said. "Maintenance said it's probably the generator. We cut power to that wing just in case. But we don't smell smoke in the rooms. Any residents in that wing evacuated?" "We moved a few into the dining room because they were panicking," she said. "Some of the more mobile ones. Most are still in their rooms. We didn't want to drag people through dark halls unless we had to." "Okay," I said. "You were right to be cautious." Behind her, I could see a cluster of residents in wheelchairs near the front desk. They looked like a row of ghosts caught mid-conversation, their faces washed in red from the flashing exit sign over the door. One woman clutched a stuffed bear to her chest. An older man in a cardigan kept trying to stand up, only to be eased back into his seat by an aide. The main fire alarm panel on the wall blazed with red LEDs. The beeping was constant, a high, nagging tone that drilled into the back of your skull. "Jones, get a look at that panel. Tell me what zones are in trouble," I said over my shoulder. "Parker, grab the irons and a water can and check out that mechanical closet in East Wing. Don't touch anything electrical until we know what we're dealing with." They nodded and moved off, their boots thudding on the vinyl floor. I turned back to Lori. "How many residents in the building tonight?" I asked. 72, she said, plus staff. "How many on oxygen?" At least 15 on concentrators and maybe 10 on portable tanks, she answered. Some of the concentrators have battery packs, but they're not meant for this long. Okay, I said. I could feel the weight of the number settling on my shoulders. We've got 2 ambulances coming, maybe more if the roads cooperate. For now, you and I are going to figure out who's in the most immediate danger and get them closer to the exits. A voice came over my radio. Cap, this is Parker, he said. I'm at the mechanical room door. Definitely got a burnt smell here. No visible flames, but the generator casing is hot, and there's a light haze in the hallway. All right, I replied. Keep that door closed for now. If it does go fully, I want it contained. See if maintenance killed the fuel line. On it, he said. Jones's voice cut in next. Panels showing main alarm from power loss and a supervisory from East Mechanical, he reported. No active heat detectors or sprinklers flowing in the resident rooms. That was one small mercy. Copy, I said. Let's treat this as both a fire risk and a medical emergency. I'll set up command in the lobby. Jones, I want you to start a quick walkthrough of both wings. Check for smoke. Check that room doors are closed. Take an aide with you who knows the residents. Got it, he said. I turned back to Lori. You have a paper list of your residents by room? I asked. Yes, she said quickly. In the nurse's station. I'll grab it. She jogged off into the dim hallway. I stepped over to the front windows and looked out. Snow plastered the glass in uneven sheets. I could see the spinning lights of the squad cars, their beams carving red and blue tunnels through the storm. Below the window, in the circular drive, a couple of aides were wheeling residents toward a waiting van, blankets piled high on their laps. The storm swallowed the sound of everything but the wind. Inside, the alarm panel kept beeping, steady and impatient. I took a breath and blew it out. All right, Sam, I muttered to myself. Remember what they taught you. One thing at a time. Big picture, then details. At my age, you talk to yourself more. But I'd like to think I earned the right. Lori came back with a 3-ring binder hugged to her chest, papers sticking out in curls. This is the census list, she said. Names, rooms, notes about oxygen or special needs. Perfect, I said. Open it up on the desk. She flipped it open, hands shaking just enough for me to notice. I scanned the pages, fingers tracing columns. Room 101, 102, 103. Beside each name were little notes. Fall risk, wanderer, 02 at night, full assist. About halfway down one page, I saw Ellis, Margaret, room 112, 022L, CHF, confused, likes hymns. That last part made me smile despite myself. Sometimes nurses slip in human details like that, reminders that these people are more than diagnoses. Okay, I said. Here's what we're going to do. I'll take East Wing first with you. We'll check on the oxygen patients, see whose machines are chirping low battery, and get them closest to this lobby where it's easier to get them out if we need to. My guys will keep an eye on the generator and look for any smoke spread. She nodded, lips pressed tight. As we turned toward the hallway, a flicker of movement caught my eye. Near the cluster of chairs, an older woman with thin white hair was trying to stand. Her blanket slid off her lap and puddled on the floor. I stepped over and bent down. Easy there, ma'am, I said. Where are you headed? Her eyes were bright but clouded, like water over stones. I have to go home, she said. My husband will be wondering where supper is. I'd spoken some version of this conversation dozens of times. It's all right, I said gently. They're just having a little trouble with the lights tonight. You're safe here. Why don't you sit tight a little longer for me? She frowned. You're not one of the regular boys, she said. No, ma'am, I said. I'm from the fire department. Oh, she said. Well, make sure you check the back porch. The light back there goes off if you slam the door. I'll keep that in mind, I promised. I tucked the blanket back around her legs and gave one of the aides a nod. He gave me a grateful look and stayed close to her side. Then Lori and I stepped into the east wing. The contrast from the lobby hit me right away. In the hallway, the only light came from those little emergency fixtures spaced every 50 feet, dim, yellowish, and not nearly enough. Most of the usual overheads were dead, their plastic covers dull ovals in the gloom. The exit sign at the far end pulsed red. The rest was shadows and silhouettes, door frames, handrails, picture frames on the walls. A faint haze hung in the air near the ceiling, catching the beams of our flashlights. Not thick enough to sting the eyes, but enough to make me listen harder for any hint of a crackle that didn't belong. Underneath the chemical smell of the building, I caught that hot plastic scent again. Stronger now. I didn't like it. Any sprinklers go off yet? I asked Lori. No, she said. We'd be ankle-deep in water if they had. Let's keep it that way, I murmured. We walked down the hall, our boots muffled on the nice, quiet carpet someone had thought would make the place feel more like home. From behind some doors came sounds, coughing, the rattle of bed rails, a television turned up too loud. From others, nothing. We stopped at the first room on our list with a note about oxygen. Lori knocked lightly and eased the door open. Inside, the room was lit only by the glow of a battery clock and the pale snowlight coming through the window. The shape in the bed rose and fell. A small machine on the floor next to the nightstand emitted a faint beep, then another, patient but insistent. A portable concentrator. Battery indicator, 1 bar, blinking. Mrs. Perez, Lori said softly. It's Lori, honey. I brought a fireman with me. The woman in the bed stirred. Huh? She said. Is it breakfast? Not yet, Lori said with practiced warmth. Our lights are being silly tonight. I'm just going to put you on a different kind of oxygen, okay? She moved with gentle efficiency, switching the nasal cannula from the dying concentrator to a small green tank waiting nearby, turning the knob until the hissing whisper started. The machine's beep cut off. I clicked my flashlight toward the floor, scanning for extension cords, power strips, anything that might have overheated. Nothing jumped out. Just the concentrator, a space heater unplugged and pushed against the wall, and the usual tangle of cords behind the dresser. Looks okay in here, I murmured. Let's move on. We repeated this process down the hall, room to room, name to name. Some residents were asleep and never fully woke. Others peered at me with wary curiosity. I remember you, one gentleman said as I stepped past his TV. You pulled my grandson out of that car crash on Route 19. I remember your grandson, I answered. He was more worried about his baseball glove than his leg. That made the old man smile, which helped both of us. In one room, a woman puffed angrily on nothing at all. They took my cigarettes, she announced as soon as we knocked. Said I can't smoke in here. I told them I survived 3 husbands and a war. I'll survive a cigarette, but no. Tell you what, I said. Let's get you through this power outage, and then you can yell at them about your cigarettes all you want. She sniffed, but allowed Lori to adjust her oxygen. When you walk enough nursing home hallways, you realize every room is its own little world. Memories thumbtacked to bulletin boards. plastic flowers on the windowsill, a radio playing big band music, a Bible open on the bedside table. Most of these people had longer histories than the rest of us combined. And yet tonight, all those stories were hanging by the same thin thread of a building with no power. About halfway down the east wing, the smell of hot plastic got stronger. I saw the mechanical room door ahead, a metal panel with a key latch. Parker's flashlight beam spilled from under it in a narrow line. "Cap?" he called when he heard our steps. I stepped over. "How's it look?" I asked. He had a dust mask pulled up over his mouth and nose, more against the smell than anything else. "Generator casing's hot, but there's no open flame," he said. "Looks like one of the wiring bundles cooked itself. Insulation melted. There's scorch on the wall right above the main feed, but it didn't jump. Whoever killed the fuel did us a favor." "Any chance of bringing it back online without burning this place down?" I asked. "Not tonight," he said. "You'd need an electrician, not a firefighter. And even then, I wouldn't trust it until someone replaced half those cables. This thing's been begging for attention for years." I grimaced. We'd sent them inspection notices about that generator more than once. Budget meetings, delays. "We're working on it." Tonight, the bill had come due. "All right," I said. "Keep an eye on it a few more minutes. Make sure nothing changes. If you see any flare-up, hit it with the extinguisher and call it out. But don't stand here breathing this in any longer than you have to." "Gladly," he said. Laurie and I moved on. At the end of the east wing, the hallway bent around a corner. Beyond it, I could see the red glow of an exit sign over a side door, snow piled high against the glass. According to the list, the last few rooms down here were mostly long-term residents. That included room 112. "Mrs. Ellis is down this way," Laurie said quietly, as if reading my thoughts. "You know her well?" I asked. "She's one of my favorites," Laurie said. "Sweet as can be when she's having a good day. On the bad days, she thinks we're all thieves. Her heart's not great. She tires easily. She loves old hymns, though. Sings them under her breath sometimes when she's scared." I glanced at her profile in the dim light. "Does she have family?" I asked. "A daughter a few hours away," Laurie said. "She comes when she can. But she's got her own kids and a job. You know how it is." I did. We stopped outside room 112. A dim glow seeped out from under the door, flickering, like candlelight. I frowned. "Did you leave a lamp on in there?" I asked. Laurie shook her head. "We've been trying to conserve battery power," she said. "Most of the rooms only have those little tap lights we handed out." The smell of plastic was weaker here, but my firefighter brain didn't like flickering mystery lights in dark rooms. I knocked gently. "Mrs. Ellis, it's Laurie." A thin voice answered, shaky but clear. "Door's open," it said. "I can't see you very well." Laurie turned the handle. Room 112 was small but tidy. The bed sat against one wall, sheets pulled up neatly to the chest of the woman lying there. Her hair was thin and white, sprayed into soft curls that had seen better hours. A nasal cannula looped around her ears, the tubing trailing down to a concentrator on the floor. Its green power light was off. A second cord ran from it to a battery pack the size of a book. The battery indicator was flashing a stubborn red. On the nightstand, a cheap plastic lantern glowed weakly, running on its last AAs. Next to it sat a framed photograph of a younger woman in a wedding dress, arm in arm with a man in a dark suit. They were laughing at something just outside the frame. On the wall above the bed hung a painting of a farmhouse at sunset, the kind you buy in bulk for places like this. But what caught my eye was something else. On the far wall, opposite the bed, was a picture I recognized. A framed print of firefighters working a scene at night. Floodlights glared off wet pavement. A truck loomed in the background, firefighters in turnout coats, moving like shadows around it. It wasn't Station 47, too many ladders on the truck, but the feeling was the same. Mrs. Ellis's eyes tracked us as we stepped in. "Laurie," she said, "is that you?" "Yes, ma'am," Laurie said, moving to her bedside. "I brought a friend. He's here to help with the lights." "Well, that's good," Mrs. Ellis said. "The dark makes the shadows louder." Her voice had that tremor age gives people, but it was still strong beneath it. I moved into her line of sight and tipped my helmet a little. "Evening, ma'am," I said. "Name's Sam. I'm with the fire department." She squinted. For a heartbeat, something flickered in her eyes. Recognition, or something like it. "Sam," she repeated slowly. "You look well, like somebody I used to know." "We older fellas all start to look alike after a while," I joked gently. "How are you feeling tonight, Mrs. Ellis?" "Tired," she admitted. "Breath feels short. And everything went quiet. No humming from the machine. When it stopped, I thought maybe my time was up, and no one told me." "The machine stopped because the building lost power," I said. "It's not just you. But we're here now. We're going to make sure you keep on breathing whether this building behaves or not." She studied me for a moment, then nodded like she'd come to a decision. "Are you married, Sam?" she asked. I blinked. "Yes, ma'am," I said. 41 years. Same woman. Longest shift of my life." That made Laurie snort softly in spite of herself. Mrs. Ellis smiled, just a little. "Then you know what it's like to have somebody depend on you," she said. "That's all anybody wants, really. To know somebody will come if the lights go out." She closed her eyes briefly, then opened them again. "The lights went out," she said. "And you came. That's something." Laurie busied herself switching the oxygen from the dead concentrator to a new tank. I watched her hands, making sure every connection was tight, every knob turned the right way. The new tank hissed quietly. Mrs. Ellis's chest rose a little easier. Her lantern flickered again, dimmer now. "Sam?" she said. "Yes, ma'am." "Would you do me a kindness?" she asked. "Just sit a minute. I keep thinking about my Henry, and it's hard to do that and be brave at the same time." "I can sit," I said. "We're waiting on more help anyway." I pulled the visitor chair closer to her bed and lowered myself into it, feeling my knees complain. The picture of the farmhouse watched from the wall. The firefighters in the other frame seemed frozen mid-stride, forever walking toward some emergency we couldn't see. "How long you been here at Maple Creek?" I asked. "Oh, they brought me here after my heart decided it was tired of climbing stairs," she said. 3 years? 4? Time gets foggy. I kept asking them when I could go back to the house. Then one day I realized the house was in here now." She tapped her temple gently. "I can set the table all I want up there," she said. "No dishes to wash, either." "That's not all bad," I said. She gave a thin laugh. "No, I suppose not. Henry would have liked that part. He hated washing dishes, said it made his hands prune." She fell quiet for a moment, eyes roaming the dim ceiling. "Did you ever meet him?" she asked suddenly. "Who?" I said. "Henry," she said. "He was a volunteer firefighter when he was young. Loved to tell stories about how big the flames were. I used to worry more about the roads in winter than the fires. But he'd come home every time, smelling like smoke and sweat, and I'd pretend not to fuss. I shook my head. Can't say I met him, I said, but I've met a lot of men like him. He's been gone a long time, she said softly. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I still expect to hear his boots on the porch. I think that's why I don't like when the power goes out. It reminds me how quiet the house got after he left. I nodded. The alarm panel in the lobby was a faint echo down the hall. Somewhere, a TV blared a commercial too loud. Outside, the wind pushed another handful of snow against the window. You're not alone tonight, I said. You've got a whole station full of fools, like Henry and me, fussing over you. She smiled again. Well then, she said, I suppose I can be brave a little longer. The lantern gave one last sputter and went dark. I turned my flashlight upward, aimed it at the ceiling instead of her face. The reflected glow softened the shadows in the room. See, I said. Still some light left. She said. Her eyelids drooped. Her breathing eased into a slower rhythm. Laurie checked her pulse, nodded. She's holding steady, Laurie whispered. But if this goes on too long, she'll wear out. We're not going to let it go on too long, I said. We're going to get some of you closer to the front, where there's daylight, and easier access to the ambulances, just in case. Laurie bit her. We don't have enough staff to move everyone all at once, she said. And some of them can't sit up, let alone walk. That's why we brought the toys, I said. Let me call this in. See how much help we can get. I stepped back toward the door and keyed my radio. Engine 1 to command, I said. We've confirmed no active fire in resident rooms east wing. Generator failure in mechanical, minor scorching but contained. Multiple residents on oxygen. At least one, Mrs. Ellis in 112, is fragile. We're going to need more manpower to move high-risk residents toward the exits. Dispatch answered. Copy, Engine 1. Additional mutual aid units are being toned out. County is also dispatching extra EMS from neighboring towns, ETA depending on roads. Understood, I said. I looked at Laurie. Until they get here, we work with what we've got, I said. Who do you trust most to help move people safely? Alma and Jeff, she said. They're on the west wing tonight. Alma's strong as an ox. Jeff used to work transport. Let's grab them, I said. We'll start with the ones whose oxygen is closest to empty. She nodded. I'll have someone bring a wheelchair for Mrs. Ellis, she said. We can stage her near the dining room. It's closer to the front door and the portable power we have from the ambulances. All right, I said. Tell them to bring blankets, too. It's going to get colder in here before it gets warmer. As she slipped out to make those arrangements, I stood there another minute, watching Mrs. Ellis sleep. Her fingers twitched now and then, like she was turning the pages of some invisible hymnal. Above her, the painting of the farmhouse glowed faintly in my flashlight's bounce. I thought about all the winters that farmhouse had seen, all the nights someone there had watched the sky, wondering if the power would hold. Then I thought about how many of my own nights I'd spent worrying the same thing for other people. The job changes you. You start seeing every building not as what it looks like on the outside, but as what would happen if everything inside it went wrong at once. Tonight, Maple Creek Care Center had decided to test that theory. The next hour passed in pieces. Storm time. You know how, when you're driving in bad weather, miles feel longer. Each turn, each hill, each gust of wind becomes its own little world. This was like that, but with hallways and room numbers. We moved like a slow-motion parade through Maple Creek. Staff pushing wheelchairs, aides guiding shuffling feet, my crew carrying portable oxygen tanks and flashlights like strange lantern bearers. We triaged residents as best we could. The ones whose machines were truly failing, batteries done, tanks nearly empty, went first. We lined them up near the front lobby and dining room, where the big windows let in what little light the storm allowed. The stronger folks, the ones who grumbled about missing the end of their TV shows and asked if this would be in the paper, we left in their rooms with extra blankets and backup flashlights, doors closed to keep what warmth they had. I lost count of how many times I said, "You're doing just fine, ma'am," or, "We'll keep an eye on you, sir, don't you worry." I lost count of how many times someone grabbed my hand a little too tight and didn't want to let go. Somewhere along the line, the first of the mutual aid units arrived. Engine 12 from the next town pulled into the lower lot, followed by another ambulance, and then a county emergency management van full of cots and portable heaters. Each time fresh help pushed through the front doors, cheeks red from the cold, I felt a little of the tension in my shoulders ease. We set up a temporary treatment area in the dining room, moving tables aside to make room for wheelchairs and cots. Portable monitors beeped. Oxygen cylinders hissed. Nurses moved from bed to bed, checking vitals in the weak light. And through it all, the snow kept falling outside, as if the storm had forgotten how to stop. At some point, I found myself back near room 112. Mrs. Ellis was in the hallway now, bundled in a thick blanket, settled in a wheelchair. One of the aides had draped a knit shawl over her shoulders for good measure. She sat near the wall, oxygen tubing looped back to a portable tank hanging from the handles of the chair. Her eyes were half closed, but her lips were moving. As I got closer, I realized she was whispering something. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Her voice was barely audible, a thin thread weaving through the beeps and murmurs. I stood there a second, letting it wash over me. You spend enough nights in chaos, you learn to recognize the sounds that mean we're going to be okay, even when they're quiet. A hymn whispered in a nursing home hallway during a blackout is one of them. "Still being brave?" I asked when she paused for breath. She opened her eyes and turned them toward me. "As brave as I know how," she said. "They tell me I'm going on a little ride soon." "That's right," I said. "We're moving you closer to the front. Easier to keep an eye on you there." "Will you be there?" she asked. "I'll be around," I said. "I've got to walk these halls a few more times tonight. Make sure nobody's hiding under the beds." She said. "If I were hiding, I'd choose somewhere better than under a bed. That's where all the dust bunnies live." Her wit made me chuckle. "Fair point," I said. "I'll keep you informed on better hiding spots." She patted my hand where it rested on the wheelchair handle. "You remind me of Henry," she said. "How so?" I asked. "He used to joke when things got scary," she said. "Said if you laugh, your lungs remember how to work." I think that's why I loved him. Even when the roof leaked and the stove broke, he could still make me laugh. "Sounds like a good man," I said. "He was," she agreed softly. "One night the power went out at our house. Big storm. Kids were tiny. They were crying in their beds, scared of the thunder. Henry lit candles all over the living room and told them we were camping. He made shadow puppets on the ceiling until they fell asleep." Her gaze drifted toward the dark window. "I keep thinking about that tonight," she said. "How someone always has to be the one to light the candle." I squeezed the wheelchair handle. You team up enough people like Henry and me, I said. We can light half this town. She smiled again, eyes crinkling at the corners. I'm glad you came, she said. So am I replied. What happened next is the part of the night that still wakes me up sometimes, even now. Not because it was the most dramatic thing I ever saw, but because of how close we came to missing it. We'd been at Maple Creek about an hour and a half when the first real plume of smoke made itself known. The storm outside was still in full voice. The power was still out. The generator still sat sulking in its warm little metal box. We had residents staged in the lobby and dining room, more in the hallways, and others tucked into their rooms with flashlights and extra blankets. We'd established a rotation, one crew checking the mechanical rooms and electrical closets for hot spots, another doing rounds with the staff, checking on the frailest residents every 15 minutes. I was walking the West Wing with Jeff, the transport aide, going room to room when I smelled it. Not the faint, hot plastic tang we'd been living with all night. Sharp, stinging smoke. The kind that makes you blink. I stopped in the hallway and lifted my nose, breathing shallow. Do you smell that? I asked Jeff. He sniffed. Could be from the kitchen, he said. They were trying to heat soup on those little camp stoves. This isn't soup, I said. This is insulation. I turned toward the nearest heating vent. A faint wisp of gray rose from it, barely visible in our flashlight beams. Where's this duct go? I asked. Jeff frowned. Should be the laundry room, he said. Around the corner and to the left. We hurried down the hall. As we turned the corner, the smell got stronger. A hazy line of smoke clung to the ceiling like a ghostly handprint. At the end of the corridor, the laundry room door stood slightly ajar. Warm, dirty air rolled out from it. Stay here, I told Jeff. If I yell, pull the alarm string by the exit and start moving people away from this wing. He swallowed. Got it, he said. I pushed the laundry room door open the rest of the way. Inside, the room was lit by a single emergency light over the door. Rows of industrial washers and dryers filled the space, their metal sides dull in the dim glow. The smoke was thicker in here, but not choking. It seemed to be coming from the far wall, where a bank of dryers stood stacked too high. I could hear a faint, crackling pop from inside one of them. I moved closer, hand on the strap of the extinguisher slung over my shoulder. One of the upper dryers had a black line of soot creeping out around its door. A faint orange flicker showed through the drum vents. Lint fire. It doesn't sound like much, but lint is tricky stuff. Once it gets going inside a duct, it moves fast, hidden, popping out where you least expect. I keyed my radio. Command, this is Cap in the West Wing laundry, I said. We've got an active dryer fire, smoke in the duct. Advise all crews we're escalating. I'm going to hit it from the front, and then we need someone on the roof to check the vent. Copy, Cap, came the answer. Alarm already active. Additional crew en route to your location. I pulled the dryer door open a crack and got my eyebrows singed for the effort. Flames licked out, hungry for air. I snapped the nozzle on the extinguisher, aimed low into the drum, and squeezed. Dry chemical powder blasted in, coating the burning lint. The flames guttered, then retreated. But the crackling in the duct above us didn't stop. If anything, it moved. Damn, I muttered. Jeff peered in the doorway, eyes wide. We got vents on the roof above this? I asked. Yeah, he said, 2 big ones. My radio crackled. Parker here, he said. I've got the roof crew heading up with a line. We'll open the vent cap and see what's happening. Good, I said. I'm going to pull this dryer unit away from the wall and see if there's access to the duct behind it. Get me a maintenance guy if you can find one." Jeff darted off. The next few minutes were noisy and messy. We killed power to the dryer bank. With Jeff and a maintenance man named Carl, we muscled the offending unit a few inches away from the wall, just enough to reach the flexible duct at its back. The duct was hot to the touch. We disconnected it and hit the opening with another blast from the extinguisher. Powder puffed out, coating everything in reach with a chalky white film. Overhead, I heard the thump of boots on the roof. Someone shouted, "Found it!" and then, "Opening now!" A moment later, a belch of thick, dark smoke shot out of the ceiling vent, followed by a hiss and a sizzle as water from a hose hit hot metal. The crackling died away. The room began to clear. "Cap, roof fires contained," Parker's voice came over the radio. "Looks like lint smoldered up the duct, started to take the cap. We caught it before it spread to the roof decking." "Good work," I said. I looked around the laundry room. The emergency light glowed through a haze of dust. The washers and other dryers stood quiet, their stainless fronts now speckled with white. It wasn't pretty, but it wasn't the inferno it could have been. In another 5-10 minutes, that lint could have gotten into the attic space. Once fire starts running above ceiling tiles in an old building, it does not play nice. I felt sweat trickling down the back of my neck, under my collar. "Cap, you okay in there?" Jeff asked nervously. "I'm fine," I said, just thinking about how close we came to having to carry everyone out into that snow. He shuddered. "Some of them wouldn't have made it," he said quietly. He wasn't wrong. "Let's not tell them how close it was," I said. "They've already got enough to worry about." I stepped back into the hallway and took a deep breath of slightly fresher air. Down the corridor, residents' doors remained closed, their little paper name tags neat and innocent. For now, they were still just doorways into rooms, not windows into trouble. I intended to keep it that way. By the time the dryer fire was fully extinguished, the building had gained a new smell to go with the rest: burnt lint and chemical powder. We aired out the laundry room as best we could, cracked a few windows in the hallway, and kept the residents on the west wing informed enough to quell the rumor mill. "Just a little smoky," we told them. "We've got it handled." Outside, the storm finally began to ease. The heavy snow turned to a fine, drifting fall. The wind let up, trading its howl for a tired sigh. Inside, the worst of the chaos settled into a kind of organized waiting. Portable generators from the county arrived and were hooked up to key circuits: oxygen room, nurses' station, lobby lights. The alarm panel, now satisfied that the worst threats had been addressed, allowed itself to be silenced. The constant beeping stopped. The sudden quiet felt almost loud. I checked my watch. It was after midnight. We'd been on scene close to 3 hours. I did another walkthrough of both wings, checking with crews and staff, making sure nobody had been forgotten. When I came back to the dining room, I saw Mrs. Ellis again. Someone had moved her to a corner where a portable heater hummed softly. Her wheelchair was turned so she could see out through the big window toward the parking lot, where all the emergency vehicles sat at odd angles, lights still flashing. Snowflakes drifted lazily past the glass, lit by the glow. I walked over. "How are you holding up, Mrs. Ellis?" I asked. She smiled when she heard my voice. "Still here," she said. "I heard there was a little fire in the laundry." "There was," I admitted. "We put it out before it got too uppity." "Good," she said. "I'd hate to have my nightgowns go up in smoke. Took me years to get them properly broken in." I chuckled. I think your nightgowns are safe, I said. She nodded toward the window. Is it still snowing? She asked. A little, I said. But nothing like before. Roads are starting to clear. They're bringing in some portable generators. Power company says full power will be back sometime in the morning. Morning, she murmured. Always nice when it shows up. She was quiet for a moment. You know what I've been thinking about? She asked. What's that? I said. That when you're young, she said, you don't think much about who shows up when things break. You just flip a switch and expect the lights to work. You put your head on the pillow and expect the house to stay standing. She looked at me, eyes clear in a way they hadn't been earlier. But as you get older, she continued, you start to notice who comes when it doesn't. You start to count on them in a different way. Not just as workers, as proof that the world hasn't completely forgotten how to care about its old people. Her words landed heavier than any compliment I'd ever gotten at an awards banquet. We don't always get it right, I said quietly, but we're trying. I know you are, she said. I can see it in the lines on your face. I laughed softly. These lines come from a combination of this job and my kids, I said. Probably more the kids. She squeezed my hand. You tell them, she said, that a little old lady at Maple Creek is grateful they let their father come out in the middle of the night to fuss over strangers. I'll pass along the message, I said. An orderly approached. Cap, EMS wants to talk to you about transport priorities, he said. They're looking at moving some of the highest risk folks to the hospital overnight. All right, I said. I turned back to Mrs. Ellis. They might take you for a little ride downtown, I told her. Just to keep a closer eye on your heart until this place is fully back up. Well, she said, as long as they bring me back for bingo. I'll make sure they pencil that into the discharge orders, I said. She smiled again. Thank you for coming tonight, Sam, she said. Tell Henry I said hello if you see him before I do. Something about the way she said it sent a shiver down my spine. I'll do my best, I replied. We cleared Maple Creek a little after 2 in the morning. By then, the portable generators were humming steadily. The power company had crews working on the downed lines. Most of the residents were dozing again, worn out from the excitement. A handful, including Mrs. Ellis, went to the hospital for observation. The rest stayed put, with staff checking on them like mother hens. As my crew loaded the last of our equipment back onto the engine, I took one last look at the building. Viewed from the parking lot, with the snow calming and the emergency lights finally off, it looked almost ordinary again. A few windows glowed warm yellow. A nurse in pink scrubs walked past one, shadow stretching. If you didn't know what had happened that night, you might drive by and never think twice. But we knew. We knew how close a failed generator and a lint-clogged dryer had come to turning that quiet building into something else entirely. We knew how many frail hands had jerked awake when the lights went out and wondered, is this it? We knew how many of them had gone back to sleep, with oxygen hissing softly at their bedside and hymn fragments on their lips. I climbed into the engine and settled into my seat with a groan. Parker glanced at me. You all right, Cap? He asked. I'm old and I smell like burnt laundry, I said. But other than that, fine. He chuckled, started the engine. As we rolled down Maple Hill Road, the building disappeared behind us, swallowed by the dark and the falling snow. But it didn't leave my mind. Not that night. Not for a long time. Years passed. Storms came and went. I eventually retired from Station 47, turned in my gear, and tried to figure out who I was when I wasn't riding the engine out into whatever came over the radio. It's a strange thing, stepping away from a life that's defined you for decades. One day you're Cap Sam, the guy from Station 47. People wave you through intersections. Nurses nod when you walk into ERs. The next, you're just a man in line at the grocery store, arguing with yourself about which cereal has less sugar. I stayed busy as best I could, did some fishing, helped out with fire prevention talks at the schools. My wife volunteered me for more church committees than I knew existed. And every now and then, when the snow piled up a certain way or the lights flickered during a storm, my mind went back to Maple Creek. I made a point of dropping by now and then, sometimes to visit friends who'd moved in, sometimes just to sit in the lobby and drink bad coffee with the staff. They'd upgraded the generator after our little adventure, I noticed. New unit, shiny casing, better vents. The laundry room had new ductwork and a set of dryer filters so clean they made my teeth hurt to look at. They'd hung a framed photo in the hallway near the dining room. It showed a line of firefighters in turnout gear, pushing wheelchairs through a snow-dusted parking lot, red lights reflecting off the drifts. Some of the faces under the helmets were familiar. Some looked too young. In the background, you could see the outline of Maple Creek, windows dark, snow blowing sideways. In the foreground, almost by accident, the camera had caught one pair of hands clasped together in a wheelchair blanket. Thin, wrinkled fingers gripping a younger hand in a turnout glove. The caption underneath read, Station 47, Winter Storm, January 20. Thank you for being our lights. The first time I saw that plaque, I had to go outside and stand in the fresh air for a while. The years sand down a lot of things, but they don't sand down the feeling of someone trusting you with their life. One afternoon, a few winters after the blackout, I was back at Maple Creek to visit an old neighbor who'd moved in. On my way out, I stopped at the nurse's station to say hello to Lori. She looked up from a chart and smiled. Hey, stranger, she said. We still talk about that night you guys saved our bacon. You saved your own bacon, I said. We just helped move it around a little. She shook her head. By the way, she added, I meant to tell you. Mrs. Ellis, you remember her from room 112? Of course I do, I said. How's she doing? Lori's smile softened. She passed about a year after the big storm, she said gently. In her sleep, heart finally had enough. I felt a little ache in my chest that had nothing to do with plaque or cholesterol. I'm sorry to hear that, I said. She had a good year, though, Lori continued. Her daughter moved into town, brought the grandkids around more. Mrs. Ellis even led hymns at our little Sunday services for a while. Said the blackout night reminded her there was still work left to do. I swallowed past a lump in my throat. I'm glad to hear she had company, I said. She asked about you, you know, Lori added. Said if we saw you, we were supposed to tell you Henry was getting impatient, but she was making him wait until she finished her verses. That almost did me in. I pictured her sitting by a window somewhere, blanket tucked around her legs, whispering hymns and scolding a man I'd never met. Well, I said, voice a little rough, I hope Henry appreciates punctuality. I'm sure he does, Lori said. On my way out, I stopped by the plaque in the hall again. This time, I noticed something I hadn't seen before. Tucked into the frame, under the glass, was a small, folded note. Curious, I leaned closer. Somebody had left it slightly open at the edge, and with careful fingers, I slid it out just far enough to read. In shaky handwriting, on the corner of a church bulletin, it said, To the fireman who sat with me in the dark, thank you for being my candle that night. Men, E. I stood there a long time, holding that little piece of paper between my fingers, feeling the weight of it. People sometimes ask me, now that I'm retired, which fires I remember most. They expect stories about flames 20 feet high, or explosions rattling the windows for miles. And sure, I remember those. But I also remember a nursing home in winter. I remember a generator that gave up, a dryer that tried to misbehave, and a hallway full of people humming hymns under their breath while we shuffled them through the dark. I remember an old woman who wanted to be brave because somewhere in her memory, a man named Henry had once lit candles in a storm. And I remember how, for one long night, our job was not just to keep them breathing and the building standing. It was to stand there with them in the dark and say, "You are not alone. Somebody still knows you're here." The night the nursing home went dark, the fire never made the news. There were no dramatic helicopter shots, no headlines. Just a lot of tired firefighters, nurses, aides, and paramedics driving home in the pale light of a winter morning, smelling like laundry lint and coffee. But if you ask me, that quiet night, with its beeping machines and whispered hymns, was one of the most important calls we ever ran. Because someday, if we're fortunate enough to get old, we won't just need sirens and hoses. We'll need candles in the dark, and people willing to hold them. My name's Cap Sam, and that's what I remember from the night the nursing home went dark.